Welcome to Adelaide City Talks, the podcast where we discuss local news, updates and politics concerning the City of Adelaide. I'm Councillor Henry Davis and I'm joined by my co-host, Councillor Mary Couros. So whether you're a long-time resident, a business owner, or just someone who's curious about the inner workings of local government and particularly Adelaide City Council, we invite you to tune in and join us in this conversation. Our goal is to keep you informed and engaged with the issues that matter most to our community.
Hi, Henry.
Hi, how's it going?
I think we should mention that these are also our views and not the views of the council.
So how have you been? You've got a bit of a croaky voice today.
I have a bit of a cold. It's been going around. Not COVID. It's definitely a cold. Because we've been missing a little bit, haven't we? We haven't.
There hasn't been a lot on.
No, there hasn't been. The council meetings are kind of non-existent.
Yeah.
They're not. I mean, well, they are existing, but they're not. We're not doing motions about delivering for the budget, which for me, being a second-term councillor here, normally we're spending this time fighting for the budget and putting our views and where we think the direction for the administration should go to in the budget. But we haven't been doing any of that. I mean, you've been a councillor before or at Burnside. How is that the same for you?
Well, see, what I've really noticed with this new governance structure that we've put in, obviously it cost ratepayers about $120,000 to implement something. So councillors now getting paid a whole bunch of extra money to sit as the chairs. But what I've really noticed is they're now just chairing workshops. Yep. So the administration come actually with a lot of content to then put onto councillors, and there's actually very little chance for discussion and debate. Yep. So most of that council time or committee time is simply receiving information from the administration, which would normally be condensed into a workshop. And it's framed as such. This is essentially a one-directional conversation to inform you. Then we would have that debate in the chamber or formulate our views outside. So what, to my mind, is happening is we're spending a lot of time getting these workshops done every second week on the first and third. But now when we actually go into a council, our council papers are 22 pages long. So I've never seen on a series of council papers being so short, lacking in actual substantive motions, and like particularly from the administration, you'd normally expect a huge amount to come from. So the City of Burnside Council, where I was previously a council for about 8 years, we would regularly receive council agenda reports that were 300-400 pages long, and that would go through, would debate the matters and actually make decisions for the city. What it seems to be at the moment is very, very little to come to council, which I find extremely bizarre.
Yeah, so for me, Henry, I think it is more of, and I know this sounds really boring. I mean, people are listening and going, oh my God, governance, what?
People, I'm sure, are just riveted by the number of pages I have to read every fortnight.
But it really, it's really important that the way that we structure the council flows. So first of all, for me, the 4 different committees takes away the ability for administration to be able to slot something in between each committee. So the way that we structured it before, we had one committee where the administration had the ability to bring the papers or relevant information that needed to be approved by a certain time. Now they have to wait. That's one. Number 2, what I don't like is that it costs more. We have to pay for the chairs, we have to pay for extra training. And on top of that, Henry, what really caught me by surprise is on Saturday we had a workshop and now we have to employ more staff to govern the governance for the 4 committees for we're not really making double decisions on them, because as you notice, and let's lead into that, what happened last night, we had a committee meeting on the community grants. There was a little bit of a discussion about the grants and how we give them out. No one suggested changing them around at that point, yet we go to the council meeting, we have another debate about what we've already debated, had a committee meeting in regards to the community grants.
Yeah, and then we roll that and we backflip on it.
Yeah.
So if I can go through that. So the Adelaide City Council is considering, or last night considered, whether to support the Voice, the federal referendum. Council actually had a number of community impact grant applications, and one of those community grant applications was from the Adelaide Couros Foundation, who were proposing for the cost of $20,000 on the Adelaide City Council point of view to host an event worth about $48,000, which would promote reconciliation. And they were looking to bring together about 350 school students to discuss reconciliation, play a traditional game called Pando, where they would kick a ball and essentially catch it, very similar to AFL, and worked actively to promote reconciliation within our community. At the last moment, after having been approved in the committee and approved by the administration, saying that this was an excellent program, it was well formulated, and they would actually achieve its outcomes, the chair of the committee then substituted an alternative proposal, which was not recommended by the administration at the last moment, where the administration, their comment was that it was a good concept, but no plan for sustainability or products infrastructure past the 6-month trial. So the administration had recommended that we support a reconciliation event run by a charitable foundation, and then supplement it with something which was not supported by the administration going outside of these committee processes. And then the next motion was to support the voice for the federal parliament. To me, that seems like an absolute hypocrisy. For the council to say, on one hand, we actually had a Greens councillor, well, I should say he's a member of the Greens party, but saying that we should put our money where our mouth is, and then 10 seconds ago, he was voting against actively like essentially programs which would promote reconciliation in our community. I actually suggested to the chamber that it was a terrible look to, on one hand, defund reconciliation activities and then try and lay out to our community or advocate for the voice federally and say, well, why don't we return this to a committee so it's at least not completely disrespectful, I think, to our First Nations people, to on one hand defund reconciliation activities and then on the other hand promote the voice. But they didn't want to do that. They were happy to defund reconciliation and then tell everyone and grandstand about how much that they were in support of the voice to the Australian Parliament. So I thought that was a really bad look. I know that was picked up by the Advertiser today.
That's right.
But I'm pretty disappointed in the way that the Adelaide City Council have handled that particular issue.
Yeah, I see your point, and they're very valid points, but the point that they're making is that the Couros is a very large organisation, and according to one of the councillors pointed out that their very high turnover was at 3.5 billion?
I think that's what was announced. But it's not the Couros. It's not the Couros. It's the Adelaide Couros Foundation. And the Adelaide Couros Foundation have an asset pool of about $500,000. You can look that up on the ACNC. And the hilarious thing is that a company that makes money can then donate that and put it into these types of community infrastructure projects. It doesn't necessarily mean that they just don't need any help at all. But often these foundations will want to make their money go a bit further, make sure that councils are involved in it, use council resources and seek that co-funding to make that money go a lot further. Particularly when we have a reconciliation action plan, we're supporting the voice. It seems entirely reasonable that the Adelaide City would support this going forward. And so yes, the Couros makes lots of money. That means they can give more money back to our community. And in previous years, that wasn't the case.
So I guess there's two sides to this. The argument is for some of the councillors that the Couros, they wanted to send a message that no large organisation should apply for community grants. But I think what you're saying is that the actual concept of the foundation was lost within their argument because the two don't go hand in hand. Is that? Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's massive organisations like St. John's, the CFS.
Yeah.
Like the CFS, for example, is a state, supported by the by SAFECOM, by the state government.
Yeah.
But they still need support from their communities to go and deliver on very important things. So I was in the Burnside CFS and we raised money for various things to actually improve our equipment and our training. And that's just one of the ways that we really wanted to maximise the state dollars that were coming through.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. And point taken. In regards to that, but I voted for the motion. I know you voted against.
I was the only one.
I know, but I voted for the motion because I guess I didn't want to be part of. I mean, I call it activism. I guess people are going to disagree and come down on me, but I'm not going to make a point about it being about large organisations. The fact of the matter is that we had a procedure. The community grant that Councillor Giles amended it to is a very good organisation as well. And I guess at the end of the day, you could see that the numbers were there, that it was going to go their way. And I guess I rather it be final and done and move on than it being a discussion about who's better than the other.
Yeah, 100%.
But for me, it was about procedural. First of all, we have a committee. We could have these discussions. that could have been brought up in the committee to change it to another charity organisation, which gave the opportunity for administration to come back with a report on why that charity organisation was not backed, and maybe it should have gone to, if we agreed that it should have gone to somebody else, maybe it would have been another person. But that opportunity was completely lost. And you
have a lot of confidence in doing that when, as reported today, the Greens Labor faction can just come through and they dominate that council, and they're not interested in necessarily having that discussion, I feel.
No.
So there wasn't really an announcement that was going to be tabled at the meeting last night, and the chair just changed it, which I do think that as the chair of that committee, it's incumbent on the chair to include the committee in that decision-making, that role, not just roll everybody else at the last moment. That's not what you should be using that position
Only because they are community grants, and we need to be fair. We're not talking here, anything, we're disrupting people's, hopes in getting these grants, and that was just completely taken away from them.
So next topic, the budget.
So
how do we pay for these community grants, I suppose? So there was a large, there's been a lot of discussion going forward. I've been pretty annoyed at the budget process, and I've been pretty vocal in the committees about what I thought the budget process should look like and what some of the changes should be. What's your take on it?
My take on it at the moment is that I'm very concerned. I feel we're running behind, and like we said, we haven't really been fighting for the budget. We've just been sailing for the past 3, 4, 5 months. Losing track here, going on to 6 probably, and we're not really talking about the budget in our council meetings, through motions about where we think our focus should be. So we've been sailing, and on Saturday we had a workshop, because what we're looking at, we're getting close to that deadline going out to consultation.
Well, it's 30 June's coming up very quickly.
Well, we've got to go out to consultation between the 26th of May and the 18th of June. We have a public hearing on the 13th of June.
Yeah.
So
and then we have to turn around that and make that in the last meeting of June.
That's right.
Like, we've basically run out of any kind of
flexibility
in the budget.
We're right in that space. Yeah. And so what we were told is that we had a workshop on Saturday. We were told that we're still waiting for the valuation. So there's 2 ways they want the rates to go up. So administration are putting forward that if we want nice, new, shiny things, we have to put our rates up.
Yeah.
So for nice, new, shiny things, rates need to be either put up by valuation or by percentage. Now, we rate within the dollar. So apparently we haven't had valuations for the last 5 years, we're told. So this is what we're going to be doing. So we're waiting for the valuations to come in. They're hoping they come in on the 15th of May. So we have a finance committee meeting on the 16th of May, so I'm sure they'll bring it all in then. But I'm really concerned, Henry. I'm really concerned because we're looking at, if we're looking at valuations, we're looking at an increase between 5 to 10%. I'm hoping, and I'm saying I'm hoping.
And a rate in the dollar increase after that.
No, we're not talking about, and there's no talk about a rate in the dollar increase yet. They're only talking about valuations.
So here's my issue with it, right? So in the long-term financial plan, after this year and next year, there's allocated for new capital spend $360,000 for new capital spend.
Yeah.
So the Hutt Street upgrade, for example, costs about $40 million.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a very long time before we pay off our Hutt Street new capital spend and that type of upgrade. We've got all these streets within Adelaide that are well beyond, well overdue for an upgrade. And we're talking about.
But Henry, can I just interrupt there? Sorry to interrupt you, but are they?
But
are they in need of an upgrade because they're end of life, or they're in need of an upgrade because we want to pretty our city?
Yeah, we want to pretty our city.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think 2 are getting confused. So we're looking, the city is not in a derelict state, meaning that it's falling apart. All right. There are sections that need repair, ongoing repair.
I think we can do a lot better with some of our main streets to really get
value on
and get people coming into the city and enjoying it. Right.
That's
I think it definitely needs a facelift.
Yes.
I do think in many areas it's looking tired, like the Hutt Street footpaths. I mean, that's another issue. You could simply address that, but the street furniture and the footpaths, I think, are in desperate need of upgrade, just from the tree roots and things like that. But we are looking at, refreshing our city and really bringing life to it and getting people back into the city.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about, there's 2 things, right? And this is what makes this budget process so confusing, is that there is the increase in the valuations, which should normally track with CPI, because we track the way that we do our valuations is based on the amount of rent that can be determined or received from a property. So say in this podcast studio here, we're in the city, let's just say that they pay $20,000 in rates, or in rent, I should say, in a year. Normally in that lease agreement, you'd see a CPI increase. That means that our rate revenue off the back of that, the cents in the dollar, would be then increased by CPI. So we need that, and it should be LGPI. Those two things are very different. It's a whole other podcast
Another one.
between LGPI and CPI. I'm yelling at the wind at the moment on that issue. But we have additional costs like increase in staff costs, increase in materials, and CPI pressures and LGPI pressures that everyone faces. Everyone's suffering at the moment from significant increases in inflation. So the valuation increase is meant to cover that, but that will not solve the long-term financial plan only allocating $360,000 of new capital spend when we've got projects, for example, the major street upgrades, worth about $140 million. So I think that just to keep pace with what we need to do as a minimum, that's what the valuations will cover. And then I think the administration need to look at, well, they are looking at, how do we then cover all this new capital spend?
So what you're saying is that you believe that the valuations will come in at 3.6%.
They should do.
They won't.
They should track with CPI.
But they won't. But
They'll come in less.
I don't think they're either. Well, this is what we will advise. We advise that because the valuations haven't been done for so long, they're going to come anywhere between 5 to 10%. So if those valuations come in at 5-10%, that's more than CPI.
Well, I mean, inflation in the December quarter, I think it was like 8.4%.
Yeah, that's inflation. Yeah. So the CPI, what's the CPI at the moment? Let's have a quick look.
Let me Google it. It was 7%. March quarter 2023. So 12 months to March, we had a CPI increase of 7%. So we should be looking straight off the bat, increase in council rates by 7%. Then if we want to have more money for new capital spend, then we need to raise the cents in the dollar.
All right, so the valuations, this is a summary of the proposed impacts here.
Yeah.
So the proposed impacts that we have here is anywhere between a 5% and a 10%. So somewhere in between it's going to land.
And we don't know that.
But we don't know what it is.
We're coming into a position where we're trying to finalize a budget. We're meant to be going out to consultation
exactly
in
my
2 weeks'
point.
time.
We don't even know.
And we don't know what our proposed CPI increases
That's right.
will be. To me, that's really concerning, because the entire cents in the dollar conversation that we should be announcing to our residents right now is highly dependent on what this valuation increase, which is completely hidden from us as councillors. So I feel it's near impossible to understand as a councillor what we're supposed to be doing. And I have significant experience about this type of thing, but it's so difficult to obtain that information. And the administration don't have it because they haven't performed these valuations. And we're running into now public consultation, which is going to happen in the next couple of weeks.
So we don't even know what the CPI increase is, if it's going to be formulated into this increase. We don't know if the valuation percentage increase is going to be formulated in this. And we don't know what revenue that will bring in to be able to work out on what new shiny things we're going to need for the city. So hopefully stay tuned over the next 2 weeks. It's going to be quite intense.
Yeah, I think we could be looking at a increase in the rates of about 13%.
That's scary.
Yeah, because if we want to have, so what really what we need to be doing, in my view, is have a $20 million a year new capital spend, and they cover the interest rate and the principal repayments of that is about 6% increase in our council rates, just to cover that in the interim. And then we need to look at the valuation increase as well, and that's not happened for a number of years. So I think that there's a lot of difficulty.
Scary. I mean, I went into the office this morning and I looked at my own council rates, and I'm just checking, what would it be if it was this value? What would it be this value? And it went up by this much. And I'm going, oh my God, I'm not just looking. They're looking here, the prediction of commercial rates, because mine's commercial property, a commercial rate of anywhere between $8.80 per week if it's at 5% valuation increase, or a $17.60 per week if it's a 10% valuation increase. Per week. So
that's a lot.
But thing is, Henry, what people don't understand is that you might think, well, as a property owner, you get rent, you should be able to afford that. But that's the amount of money I pass on to my tenant. So my tenant is actually paying that increase.
Yeah.
And so that means
And the rate increase.
small businesses
And the CPI increase.
are going to be impacted so much. And with 75% of our revenue from our rates is coming from commercial, I hate to think that what this city is going to be like. And if we end up looking like a ghost town because everyone's going to mass exit the city and go into the suburbs because it's just too expensive to do business in the city. That's what I'm worried about.
That is absolutely, it's like that compounding thing. You have a rate increase, you have a CPI increase, you have to push up your own prices, and then you have to compete. There's a lot of pressure on local business owners, and it's just eating away at any kind of
cost
profitability.
Of goods have gone up, wages have gone up, everything has gone up, and we really need to think carefully about where we go with this. So, yeah, that's a conversation for another 2 weeks, don't you think?
Come back to it. What else do you want to go through?
Well, I think the hot topic at the moment is our budget. We
not that anyone's talking about it.
Not that anyone's talking
Everyone's
about it.
talking about the prayer, the voice, everything else, except for the $20 million a year hole in our budget.
And that scares me.
It doesn't it? I feel like I'm the only one. I feel like I go into those workshops just yelling at everyone, like literally going, you don't have any idea what you're talking about in many senses.
No, I look at our motions over, like if we just look at the motions over the last 6 months, they've been mainly about community and which are great. I'm not disputing that, but they're not pushing forward to an outcome that we need for this city and to move forward. And I'm really concerned that we're missing the opportunity to be bold and to make really great decisions to be able to, achieve really good things for our city.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that probably wraps it up. We've got 2 weeks and we'll see what the budget is.
Yes.
And we'll come back and report on whatever it is. I mean, look, I can't say it enough. As a councillor, I should at least have some kind of indication about exactly what it's going to be, but I couldn't tell you.
No. Well, I look forward to that, and I'm sure we've got to probably allocate a little bit more time on that one.
I think so.
I think hopefully it won't be an hour podcast.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us on Adelaide City Talks. That'll end it for this fortnight, and we'll see you in the next 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Bye.